a few things that we might skip over a little bit too much. So I want to really talk to you guys about really being able to get people to say yes. And like when we're talking to people, when we're selling, when we're communicating with people, like what's the difference? Because like Gabby could read the same words that I'm reading, but like, or Gabby could read the same words that Ray reads, but like if Ray is closing twice the amount as Gabby, like what's the difference, right? Like where are we separating ourselves, right? So something that I was just talking to Aaron Boyd about when he was sitting here, I was like, Aaron's been in sales for a while, so Aaron's naturally good at speaking. He's naturally good at talking to people. But I think with what most people struggle with, and this is what I was saying to Aaron, is like I was saying it's just too unfamiliar still. So when you're communicating, there's these long pauses. We're letting their minds kind of free up to go think about watching the TV, to go over here and do the dishes and just not be on the phone with us. So for a lot of us, I think it's trying to learn the script, learn the process, get so comfortable speaking these things out to the point where those pauses don't happen. And when they do happen, they're really intentional on our part to get people to speak a certain way. Or maybe instead of having them, ramble on for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And then at the end of the 3 minutes, instead of them waiting for us to say something, they say, yeah, and I got to go now. Right. We're giving them the leeway, the rope to go take the conversation where they want. So for today's training, what I want to do for you guys is help you guys figure out how to get more people on the phone longer and down the funnel that we want them to go. And so the biggest thing is going to be to know our process. And I was just saying this to some of these guys in here is like, if you're not getting the results you want, if you're not producing at the level you want, maybe you're getting presentations, but people aren't saying yes. Maybe you have conversations with people and they're taking way longer than what most people's are. And maybe other people are doing most of the talking and they're all over the place. They're talking about their kids, their vacation, where they live, the weather, like all these different things. What's going to separate you from where you're at now to where you want to go is your ability to speak the script and confidently speak about it, right? Guys, there's three things that we got to master. We got to understand who we're selling, we got to understand what we're selling, and we have to know how to sell, right? And so we're going to break down these three things. And the demographic that we're speaking to, it's older people for the most part. If we're doing mortgage protection, we can get younger people, but these older people, man, they love to talk, right? Everybody knows that. They're out there rambling. They're trying to talk about their grandkids, the sport game that they just saw on TV, the weather, the grocery store, what's going on in the news, whatever they can talk about. They just want to talk. And it's okay to give them a little bit of rope, but if we give them too much, they're not coming back and they're not going to say yes when we present numbers. So we give them a little bit of space. And a way that I like to cut them off and get them back into it is simply by just saying, hey, I just need to verify some information really quick, Manny. Is your date of birth this? Are you really in Florida? Right? I'll ask a question and they're just like, yes. And then I have control back in the conversation and I'll go, okay. And just to make sure we look at some options that really do make sense for you, any kind of medical diagnoses or ailments, right? And I'll go into that next section of my script. But I don't want to give them all the room in the world because what happens is they get super comfortable, they start talking, and they talk themselves into saying, but, or I have to go, or we'll do this later. They get bored, so they decide that they don't want to be on the phone anymore. So we can't let them take the conversation and go whatever direction they want. Because if we do, then that's our fault. Right. So we have to be accountable for that in our own process. So if people are doing that right now, just understand that you gotta be the one to kind of dictate where the conversation's going. And we have to make a decision in the sales process to say, this is where I'm going to stop you from going off on your own path. And we're going to go back down this path because this is where we need to be, right? You filled something out. This is what we're looking around for. You need this. We're going to help you get it. We're not going to be on the phone for 10 hours and talk about Susie's daughter who had a soccer game and there was a duck on the soccer, whatever the case, right? I've heard some crazy stuff being on the phone with people. And so we want to make sure that we're not letting them go off to Jupiter. If you guys have ever heard of Jordan Belfort's process, he talks about the straight line selling. He says that you want to give them, a 0.1 standard deviation. You let them go up, down, but they're always moving down the path. And then sometimes we get clients or prospects that go up to Jupiter. And instead of keeping them down here, they're all the way up here. And when they get all the way up here, there's no way to get them back down. So we can't let them go up there. We can't let them go off and talk about everything. We can't let them be just buddies with us. We can't let them view us as they're just friend, right? We have to hold that authority, that professional, and we have to we're in control of that. So if we don't paint that picture, if we're not putting the spotlight on them and asking the right questions the right way and holding ourselves in that position, then we're not going to get that authority from them. So we have to make sure we're not letting them ramble on, number one. Okay, the second point, guys, is going to be that we have to know our process. We have to be able to speak the process fluently. Whether it's mortgage protection, whether it's advanced markets, whether it's final expense, general life insurance, it doesn't matter. We have to be able to speak the process to these people. And if they are, if I'm going to give you guys an example, right? I'm going to give you two examples. If I'm like, hey, Isabel, this is Tyler. I got some info that she had put in looking at that information on the life insurance programs. Was that you? Is this your date of birth? Whatever the case is. And she says yes. And then I go, okay, any kind of medical diagnoses or ailments in the past. Like if I wait that long to go to my next piece, I'm giving them all the time in the world to go. I could go do this. I could go be over here. I could go, spend time doing this, right? I'm giving them the space to decide that this might not be the thing that they want to do. So that couple of seconds, it might not seem like a lot to us, but it's very important because we can lose credibility that fast. And in their heads, our voices, the pace, the tone, the way that we're speaking, it's the only thing that they have to judge us. So for us to make sure that we're actually portraying that we are a professional and we are someone that they are going to continue having a conversation with, we have to be on our toes. We have to be the pro. And if we're not like able to move the conversation where it needs to go in a timely manner, we're going to give them all the reasons to say no. And our job is to give them the reasons to say yes. Okay. So point number two is to know the process. I was just talking to someone in here and I was saying, hey man, like, you've been in sales a while. Yeah, I know, but there's gaps in your process, in your questions, and we're losing credibility, whether it's like they tell us an issue and then they're waiting for us to say something and we're just not saying anything, or they're answering and then we don't know where to go. So we're trying to look at the script or figure it out in our head. And then they're kind of like, you can tell their tone changes just a little bit and they're not as engaged. Right. So we have to keep them engaged. I was saying it's almost like we're putting people under this like this pendulum spell. Like we're kind of like when we're asking questions, they're answering, and then right when they answer, we're in a timely manner and not giving their 3-second awkward gap. We're asking the next question. We're validating what they're saying. We're digging deeper on the things that they're saying, and we're not just kind of like blank baseline. First peeling of the layer back of the onion, and then we're kind of like scrambled eggs in the head of like where to go, and then like we just go to a new onion and like try to peel back one layer. Like if there's emotion, if there's things there, like we'll sit there and talk about it. But like to be able to know when those times are, we have to be dialed in with our process. If they say that, hey, my daughter wouldn't be able to come out of pocket with it, and I just go, if I go to my next question and say like, do you have anything like life insurance now? And then they say no. And then I say, do you have any kids? And they're like, well, I just told you I had a daughter. It's like, I'm not present enough in the conversation and I'm losing credibility because what's happening is they're judging us just like we're judging them. Like they're judging us like they are a lead to them. Right. So rather than me just being like, oh, this is a lead that I'm calling, like I have to perform. If I'm not performing, if I'm not taking care of these people, if I'm not present in the conversation, if I'm not making sure that I'm asking the right questions at the right time, if my pace isn't on point with them, if they're older and they talk slower, I got to talk slower. Like it might be a little bit annoying at first because it's new, but like you got to slow down. You got to make sure that they can understand what you're saying. And if we're not, we're losing credibility because, like I said, they're viewing us as a lead to them. Are we the right person, or is Jake from State Farm tomorrow who's gonna call because they're gonna go back and they're gonna fill out another form and they're gonna try to get in contact with somebody else? They know that it's they're at their fingertips to go find somebody. So just like they're a lead to us and we're buying a batch of them and we're calling a lot of people, they know that they can talk to a lot of people. If you ask a lot of these people if they've ever Stash always makes me laugh on these calls. If you ask these people if they've ever looked into this before, 9 times out of 10 they say yes. Yeah, I've looked into it before. Why didn't you pull the trigger, right? They haven't because of some reason. And most of the time it's because they didn't trust the person. They didn't like the way it was presented, which is another thing that I'm going to talk about. It's so important to know how we're presenting this, right? How we're presenting the solution. We don't want it to, we want it to fulfill what they're looking for, right? And sometimes verbiage and concepts come into play of how the way we can portray what they're getting, the picture we're painting with the solution, right? So the first thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about is not letting them go off to Jupiter, not letting them talk about everything and anything. We got to reel them back in to make sure they're on our path. Because if they're not going down our funnel, we're going down their funnel, right? And that's not where we want to be. The second thing is making sure our process is dialed in. If our process is not dialed in, there's going to be awkward pauses. There's going to be these times where they're questioning if they should be on the phone with us. They're questioning our credibility. They're judging us just like, how we kind of judge their situation of where we should put them. They're judging whether or not we're the right person that they want to do business with, if they're really going to trust us. So we have to make sure that, number one, we're not letting them talk about random things. Number two, or, we give them a little space here and there to make them feel good, to make them know that we're listening, but we got to know when it's time to cut that off. Hey, I'm going to verify this really quickly. They just have me reaching out for this reason, right? Boom, real quick, verify that, get back on track. Ask a question that's leading them down the path where we need them to go. Not asking them about, the weather, the news, or what movie they watched last night, right? The important things. Let them talk about those things. Second thing, the process. We got to make sure that our process is dialed in. We got to make sure our script is dialed in. We got to make sure we're communicating with these people the right way, because they are judging us. And if we're not on our game, if we're not A players to them, they're not going to do business with us. So make sure these are controllables too, guys. If you're newer, practice a lot. I was just telling some people in here, like, just read your script 3 times in the morning before you start dialing. If you do that for 21 days in a row, that's 3 weeks. Like, dude, you're going to be 10 times farther along and so much more confident. And sometimes it's just that feeling, right? Sometimes when we go into a presentation, and if I haven't done it a lot or I haven't spoken about this stuff a lot, I might just be kind of nervous because it's new, right? I'm like, and this is option 1 and option 2. And then they're like, man, why does this guy sound so uncomfortable presenting this stuff to me? Like, this is weird. Like, I don't know if I want to say yes now. But if we're just like, yeah, here's option 1, here's what it's going to look like. This is option 2. This is how much it costs. This is what it's going to fulfill for you. Little Susie's not going to have to worry about anything. Which one makes more sense? Right? So much better. And that's just an internal thing. And so I think that for a lot of us, these are 2 areas very controllable for us, that if I wanted to get better tomorrow, these are the things that I would start being conscious of, just making sure that we have dialed in. Make sure that you're not letting people over talk you and walk you down their path. Make sure that just like we are calling leads and they're a lead to us, they are also looking for who they're going to choose to do business with. And we want to make sure that we're that person for them. So don't let them judge you poorly, because that's in our control. So be that perfect person for them. Make sure that we have our process dialed in, come across as that professional, and make sure that you're not giving them all this, these awkward spaces and times during the conversation, because what happens is they judge us and they go, this guy is kind of giving me some room. I don't know. I'm just going to do this tomorrow. Right. And then they kind of back themselves out of it almost. So number 3, guys, I want to talk a little bit about, like I said, the kind of the presentation, right? And so I'm going to use a mortgage protection example, and then I'm going to use a final expense example, and I'm just going to use a general life insurance example. So for mortgage protection, I've told this story to a couple of you guys. I've called somebody before and they say, I say, have you looked into this before? They got their mortgage 5-10 years ago or something along the lines of that. And they're like, yeah, we've looked into it, but people just tried to get us life insurance, and we didn't want a whole life insurance policy for $20,000. We didn't want that. We want mortgage protection, right? So they want the concept of mortgage protection. So my job as the professional is to find them a solution, which ultimately that person couldn't qualify for term. So we were looking at a whole life plan through America. And we got them the Eagle Premier final expense policy that we use, but I called it equity protection. And I explained how it's going to benefit their family and how they're going to be able to save the equity. And rather than them having to give the house back to the bank, lose the $100,000 in equity, you're going to take this plan. It's going to save the equity. It's called equity protection. Here's how we're going to use it. Your wife is now going to have $20,000, which is 14 months of mortgage payments that they're not going to have to worry about, where they can take the time to clean the house up, clean it out, fix whatever they have to fix, make sure it's presentable to put it on the market. Now you have 14 months to be able to do it. That's how equity protection works. And that's the program that we're going to be looking at for you. It's a concept. Do you see the difference? They didn't want life insurance. They wanted the concept of mortgage protection. I just had to walk them through how they're going to use it. And so just like that in mortgage protection, I can do the same thing with final expense. You guys ever talk to somebody, for people who have been making calls on here, and you say life insurance and people are like, oh, I don't want that. They want final expense coverage. It's life insurance. The solution is life insurance, but they want the concept. So if they say that, I say, yeah, no worries at all. We'll look at those final expense programs for you. I just wanted to make sure I had a good idea of where you wanted to go. Right. And then when I present, and so I'm going to back up a couple steps. I like to ask questions in my process, whether it's final expense or mortgage, to figure out what's important to them and what they actually want. So if they're like, I want, the mortgage to be covered. I'm like, okay, awesome. Right. And then I'll ask some questions about their equity. And then I know that their equity is important to them because six figures of dollars is a lot of money. And they want to make sure that they can have that rather than it going back to the bank. Okay. So I know that that is important to them. Now, on top of that, I can spin that, now that I know that's important to them, to present to them. The presentation is so important. I can spin the presentation to make the words make sense to them of what they're getting. Because if it doesn't make sense to them in their perception, it's not going to make sense for them to say yes to. So same policy, like I said, that person had been presented in the past, is the same thing that we got them. But because I presented it differently, it made sense to them. They said yes, right? So just like in final expense, I'm going to ask questions. Were you looking for a cremation or a burial? How much does that cost? Does your family member have the money to be able to pay for that? Right there, I just gathered enough information to understand what their perception of the situation is. Cremation or burial? Burial. How much does that cost? $15,000. Does your family member have the money to pay for that out of pocket? No. I know that when I present this solution, I need to mention how it's going to cover the burial, how it's going to total the amount of the total cost that they told me it was. That's option one, right? And now they know that instead of me just saying, hey, this is a $15,000 policy, it's going to pay out to your family member. No, this is going to cover exactly what you told me the problem was. And it's going to pay out a tax-free check for them and solve that. So they told me the whole issue, and I can present that in a way that's going to make it make sense to them. But if I don't ask those questions up in the front end, how much does that cost? What are you looking for? Then I'm blindly throwing darts, right? I'm like hoping that something sticks. So I got to ask the questions up front to get the information to figure out how to present it the proper way. So with mortgage, I always say this, right? We're using our resources to put this client in the best possible situation. I know that deep down in my heart, I presented the same thing that those other people did to them. But because I took the time to walk them through the solution, to walk them through how it's going to be beneficial for their family, that it is beneficial for them. I just had to explain it the proper way. And it's what separates a good salesperson from a normal salesperson. And so just by doing that, I got someone to say yes, right? Now, on top of that, with final expense, if someone tells me that their burial's $20,000, then I know that I'm going to try to present something that in that range. And if they can't afford that, I'm going to present a $15,000 option, and I'm going to explain why that's better than nothing, right? I'm going to make it make sense to them. But if I don't ask those questions up front, my presentation doesn't follow what they're telling me they're looking for. It has to follow what they're telling me they're looking for. So through the process, if someone says, I really just want to make sure my family members aren't in a tight spot. Okay, how would they be in a tight spot? Tell me about that. Well, they're going to have to pay for this, and I don't want them to come out of pocket. Okay, do they have the money to pay for that now? Like, do you have anything set up where that's going to get taken care of now? And they're like, no. Okay. So I know that we're probably looking at X amount of dollars, and insurance is what they want. And they don't want a life insurance policy for it. They want their problems to go away. And we have the ability to provide that. And sometimes they don't, we need to know as the salesperson and the pro how to present that based off the information that they're telling us. So, and I kind of like, I'm trying to not go too deep on the, I don't want you guys to overthink it and be like, it's a lot of questions. It's kind of a lot. Like, I got to present this concept. Like, just talk to them. Like, just ask them questions. Just ask them questions on their situation. If you go through the script, and you see how the questions are labeled, like those are the questions generally of what to ask. But you know, we're trying to get them to paint their own picture, right? And if I don't do that, then I'm not going to have the information I need to present the right thing. So make sure that when you're going through your process, when you're asking the questions, we're just talking to them. Like it's not some like magical sales technique. I just need to know. Like if I don't know what you're looking for, I don't know how to help you. You know what I mean? Like if someone's like, "Yeah, I want final expense coverage," and I'm like, "How much does that cost?" And they're like, "Well, I have no idea." And I'm just like, "Well, okay, we'll just show you 100,000 and 3,000 and 18,000." It's like we're just throwing darts at the wall and hoping we're hitting the bullseye, you know? No, we got to be like, well, most times in your area, the cremation's like 5 to 8,000, and the nationwide average for burials is 12 to 20, right? Like, and I know, like, you know, maybe those numbers aren't exactly right, but I'm giving you guys an example of what being like a great salesperson is, and versus someone who's average that, you know, closes at a low end percentage. You want to be great. Like, you know, these are the things you can implement into your process. These are the questions you can ask. This is the homework you can do to provide more value to the client, right? You guys know that, yeah, that I love talking about service and how service is exactly what we need to provide to get paid. You guys want to help a lot of people, you want to make a lot of money, we got to provide a lot of service. You want to sell a lot of policies, you got to provide a whole lot of service. You want to sell bigger policies, you got to provide more service, right? When people are willing to pay a lot of money is when there's a lot of value. How can I portray this solution to have a lot of value? Them telling me that they want final expense coverage and me jumping into the quotes and going, all right, here's $15,000 whole life insurance policy. Here's what it's going to cost is zero value. I just gave them a quote for nothing, right? The more information they tell me, the more stuff that they're spilling to me about their situation, how negative it is, the more I can paint the solution in a way that's going to make sense for them, right? And that's all this is. It's the presentation. It's how does it look, right? If Mustachio was to make a cake and he puts all the same ingredients in it as Isabel, and Isabel's looks great and she does it all nice and she puts cool icing on it, but Mustachio just like plops it all in like this like oddly shaped thing, and like it's all mashed up with his hands, and he just like mixes it all up with a bowl, and he just dumps all the icing in and it doesn't look good. Like it's the same thing, it's the same ingredients, but like the presentation's what makes it look pretty, right? Blow out those candles. That is so fun. And so the presentation is so important. And so the way that we portray the solution is massively important. We don't want to just give them a surface level solution because they'll give us a surface level response when we present it. We want to make sure that we're taking care of their problems. Whatever things they need, we're painting the picture. We're telling a story. We're using a parallel. Okay. And guys, like, I love telling stories, and some of you guys hear me do it. I always talk about Susie. I love talking about Susie. She's like my go-to, right? I make a story up to get them to understand what I'm saying. I'll recall something that is not current but happened a long time ago, and I'll call that person Susie. I just do it automatically because I like saying Susie for some reason. I don't know why. It's just funny to me. But I'll just say, hey, we had Susie on the phone yesterday. Susie wanted to think about it, but Susie knew that something was going to be better than nothing. So we went ahead and got Susie started off with the lowest policy. That way she at least has something in place rather than starting off with nothing. So worst comes to worst, we'll just start you off with the lowest amount because 100% of my clients agree that it doesn't make sense to do if it doesn't make sense in the budget. And nobody knows your budget better than you do. So we'll go ahead and start you off with at least the lowest amount. I'll go ahead and get I'm just like making up an example, but I'm just saying, like, telling a story sometimes paints the picture and pulls them out of their own perception and goes, oh, this other person did this. And that makes sense, right? If someone else did that, because people love to be in groups, right? They don't want to be the odd one out. If someone else did that, that makes sense. Okay, maybe I'll do that, right? And so the idea is that my solution that I'm presenting to them, it has to make sense, right? It has to make sense to them. I could know, they could be like, I don't have $15,000. My son doesn't have 15,000. No one has $15,000 to pay for the burial. Like, we're gonna have to come out of pocket. Someone's got to come out of pocket or start a GoFundMe or take a loan out, or they're gonna be in a bad spot. And then I could present the solution, and they could be like, well, I need to think about it, right? And I could be like, this makes sense. Like, how do you not see it? But it's not their fault. It's my fault that I didn't get them to see it. It's my fault that I didn't paint the picture enough for them to see it. It's my fault that I didn't communicate how much value this was going to bring. I need to take accountability to make sure that these people are saying yes. It's not an external thing. So we're going to go back to the top. Number one, we don't let people overtalk us. We're not going to let people run around and speak about all these different things and walk us down their path, right? Number two, we got to know our process. We got to not, like, if there's a lot of gaps in your process, if someone objects and there's 3 seconds of awkward silence before you respond, they're usually clicking the hang up button, right? Or they just totally lose confidence and they're over talking us and now they have control of the conversation. But if someone says, hey, Tyler, this isn't a good time right now, and I'm like, no worries at all, I'll have you off the phone in 30 seconds. Just need to verify that we have the right person. Your date of birth is 8/10/1998. And they're like, yeah, that's right. And I'm like, okay, and just to make sure I have all the information correct, any kind of medical diagnosis or ailments in the past 12 months, like, right, like I'm in control, man. Like you can say whatever you want, but I'm gonna duck, dodge, I'm gonna get under it, I'm gonna move around and I'm gonna dodge it and pull you back in, and I'm gonna keep on moving down, right? And it's like I'm just giving I'm the pro, is all it is, right? And so rather than them thinking that, haha, that guy's, I got off the phone with him, like I'm really here to help you, bro. Like I'm not going anywhere. I'm putting up a fight. Like I'm not gonna let you boss me around. And so by that, we gain credibility and respect, but we also can't not know where to go halfway through our conversation. We got to have this dialed in. Best thing to do, I was just telling some people today, is like, make sure you're practicing your process every single day. Like read your script out loud. It sounds kind of dorky, but like they're just new words. Once they become normal to say, like if I asked every single one of you guys on here what your date of birth was or how to spell your name or your address, I bet 100% of you guys would just rattle it off. But if I ask you guys how to overcome the objection, this isn't a good time at the moment, when you can hear the TV on in the background of the client's house and they're watching the news, and they're watching the news because you can hear it because it's blaring, and we can't overcome that, like that's on us, bro. We know the wrong stuff. Like, why do we have that memorized, but we don't know the stuff? Why don't we have the stuff memorized that's going to make us money? Right. So we got to know the right thing. We have to study and learn the right things to be able to be successful. So knowing where to go in the process. And then the presentation, like the presentation is so important. How can I paint the picture? How can I portray this to make it make sense to them? Because I know it makes sense, but if I can't get them to see that, if I can't communicate that to them, then it's my fault, right? Because like I said earlier, if 2 or 3 other people had presented the same solution to somebody, how did I get them to say yes? But they gave them the same exact product, but they couldn't get them to say yes. It's because I presented it in a way that made sense to them. I figured out what they wanted, what their perception of the situation was, what their idea of it was, and I figured out how to make it make sense to them. And I know deep down in my heart, it is the right thing for them. It is going to help them. So I'm cool with portraying the solution in a way that makes sense to them. I know that it's helping them. And so if we take a step back, something that's really important to know with what we're doing, guys, we're solving people's problems with life insurance. Like they're not signing up to buy life insurance. They want, they want their problems to be solved. They don't care if it's life insurance, mortgage protection, like the actual thing doesn't matter. Like it matters to them and their perception. But like, I'm not telling, like, it's not like if I had something that actually was called like mortgage protection, that guy would say yes all of a sudden. Like if I didn't portray it to make sense, even with mortgage, even if the title actually was mortgage protection, like they would still have a hard time saying yes. So just having a good idea and knowledge, right? And strategy when I go in to present these solutions around the concepts, because it's all life insurance. But I have to be able to portray the solution to what they believe the concept is. Final expenses, like solutions for final expenses, is a concept. Like it's not a policy. Does that make sense? Like it's a final expense policy is what we call it, but it's life insurance. Like mortgage protection is life insurance. A lot of times it's term, but it's a concept. It's an idea. Like be your own bank. If you guys have ever heard that with like IULs and like advanced markets, like that's not a policy. It's not a policy. It's a concept. The tool to get it is advanced market whole life policies with cash value buckets in their policy or IULs, right? Like that's a concept, and there's a solution that's life insurance. The solution is a life insurance policy, but the concept, the idea, what makes sense for them is the concept. So I have to figure out how to make it make sense for them. And I got to use the concept. I got to portray the example. I got to provide the solution in a way that makes sense to them. Okay. And then I want to talk to you guys just a little bit about the, when we are presenting, right? When I'm presenting, guys, there's a few things that I take into consideration. And I think it's really important for all of us just to have an idea of what it is, right? So, number one, the first big thing that I want you guys just to take note of if you're taking notes is if they don't have the money to pay for it, we shouldn't be offering it because they're not going to choose it, right? It just doesn't make sense. Number two, and I'm going to teach you guys how to figure that out, right? Number two, I gotta figure out what they're looking for and explain it with my words to make sense to them rather than just saying, hey, here's your $20,000 policy, here's your $100,000 policy. I gotta paint that picture of what it is. Okay. So number one, with their income, I know that for final expense clients, a lot of times, guys, if it's above 10% of their income, I'm probably not going to go too much higher than that. Like a lot of these people don't have huge income, so I'm not going to go too much higher than that. I just know that they're just not going to be able to pay for it. Number two, we have if someone wants a final expense policy and it's 15,000 in coverage or they believe it's going to cost 15,000. Well, like if I show them a $5,000 policy, it's not going to make sense to them, right? If I have to show a 5,000 because their income, I gotta find the words to explain how that makes sense. Like I can't jump that gap. Does that make sense? Like I can't just say, hey, here's 5,000 because that's all you can afford. I have to be like, hey, 5,000 is going to be better than nothing. I just had Susie, whose husband passed last week. Husband called me, or she called me because she found the notes from the husband when I was on the phone with him. He told me he wanted to think about it because he didn't want anything. And we ended up not getting him anything. And she's in a terrible spot and said she wished they started off with the 5,000. So we don't want to put you in a position where you don't have anything because something's better than nothing. Right. And I'm going to paint a picture, tell a story, make it make sense to them about how that is beneficial for them if I have to go that route. And so I am going to portray the solution. I almost I used to call it putting together a puzzle almost, right? Because like I got to know what they believe it's going to be. I got to know what the cost is. I got to know their income. I got to know how healthy they are, right? I got to be able to speak these things. And this is like being a real pro at this. Because if I'm just like going through the script and I'm new, like, dude, get after it, get dials in, you'll make sales following the script. Like it just happens. You know what I mean? But if you want to like get like a 40-60% closing ratio and like really bump up your ROI, like these are the things that you can do to start to increase your profit. These are the things that you can do to really start to be the pro, right? Andy's 2 rules of business is figure out how to kick your own ass every single day and never let anybody else know your business better than you. Like, think about it, guys. Are you studying every day? Like, and I'm not saying that you have to. I'm just saying if you want to be great, like a lot of people underestimate the amount of effort it's going to take to be great. So like I can't sign up to make $1 million a year. Like they don't just give out money like that. You know what I'm saying? So I got to know that it's going to take some effort. It's going to take it's going to take elbow grease if I want to be great. So following these things, if you guys are consistently, trying to get better and continuing to grow and working out your kinks, and these are simple areas where we can all increase our ROI. I'm going to walk through them again. Number one is not letting them take control of the conversation. If they go talking about all this random stuff, I got to cut them off. Right? I don't want to go down their process. I want them to go down my process. Number two, know your process, right? I got to know the questions. I got to know my objections. Because if I don't, it's going to be awkward silence. It's going to be weird. They're not going to trust me. It doesn't matter what lead I'm calling. If I call somebody, if I'm trying to get information on something and there's all these awkward pauses, I'm like, dude, do you even know what you're doing? Like, I'm ready to pay you money. I need the solution. Like, can you provide it? What's going on here? We got to give them that feeling that they're going to be comfortable to say yes, right? That's number two. Number three is presentation. We got to make sure, and I'm just going off of memory here. I might miss one of these things here. Number three is presentation. I got to know how to portray the concept of what they're looking for to make sense for them. Number four is how we present, right? I'm not going to give them something that's unrealistic. I'm not going to give them something that doesn't make sense to them. I'm not going to give them something that's going to be, totally out of their budget. That's not what they're trying to fulfill, and not give them an explanation for it. I have to make it make sense for them. And I can do that by using my words and telling stories, right? Super, super powerful. I'm going to give you guys a couple of examples of how you guys can start to use this stuff or start to get better with this stuff. Number one, guys, practice your script and process, practice your objections, do it daily. Like I'm out here and I practice, right? Like I've been doing this for 2 years and I'm still practicing. I'm still trying to get better. And if you're not where you want to be right now, the fastest way to get better is to start reading out your process, investing in yourself daily, and starting to learn consistently. There's a lot of people out here this weekend, and I showed you guys a picture of, when I got started, my first month, I did 3,000. And then 3 months later, I swear to you, all I did was I practiced my script, I practiced my objections, and I went crazy on just plugging in a training by asking questions. And I gathered all this information. And then I wrote 50,000 plus the next like couple of months in a row. Right. And I just continued to get better. But all I did, the thing that separated me from where I was to where I was when I was writing 50 and beyond, is I practiced my script every day. There was nobody that could overcome objections better than me, because I practice every single day in the mirror. I put on photo booth. I would record myself, right? To the point where, like, you could say anything. Ice cream's melting in the back of the car. I just got a flat tire. Like, there's aliens that are invading us. No worries. I'll have you off the phone in 30. Like, it doesn't matter. I'll overcome anything. You know what I mean? It became fun. It was a game to me. And so I knew my process so well. And I was just so educated on how to talk to people, how to overcome their objections, ask the right questions. So by practicing, by investing in you, by training, by plugging into more content like this, by getting on all these calls, by asking the questions when you have them, you're going to continue to learn, and you're going to continue to get more information, and you're going to start to get better. And just week by week, man, you're going to stack this up, and you're not going to all of a sudden tomorrow sneeze your way in to being the top producer or being the best of the best. But what I will tell you is, if you go 25 days and you're consistent and you're willing to put in the time and you actually do the practice, I promise you, or like, I don't know, like, call me a liar, right? Like, you will get better. You will move closer to where you want to go. And you'll ask anybody on these calls, like, it's just plugging in and it's just doing the work. It's simple, right? So I want you guys to know that where you are and where you want to be, like we talked about it this weekend, like, it's not that far away. And so if you're someone right now that you're like, man, I want to be at the top of the leaderboard, man, I just want to be financially free, man, I really want to be in a position where I can work from anywhere and I can travel around and I can just make money wherever I want. Like, it's not as far away as you think it is. We just got to develop your skill set. Like, your skill set is the one thing holding you back from the life that you want. And the difference between the people that are killing it in business and killing it in sales is just their skill set. It's an internal thing. It's not a secret source of leads. It's not a magical dialing system. It's not it's not any of these external things. It's in here. I could dial off my phone all day long and close people. I did it like on Saturday. I made like 60 calls and I got a sale because I had an opportunity and I knew how to execute on it, just because I've done this before. Right. But if I'm not as experienced, if I'm not as fine tuned, if I'm not as into what I'm doing, it might take me 120. It might take me 150 calls. It might take me 200 calls. It might take me 300 calls. But the better you get, the less effort it takes. It's like riding a bike, right? There's a few other things I want to touch on. But since we have 15 minutes left, I want to go over one thing really fast with you guys that'll be super beneficial for everybody on here. If you guys don't know, Americo gives out a big bonus every 6 months. So in June, so through January to June, which we're in the beginning of the 6 months right now. So if there's ever a time when you're like, I want to start going for this, like, it's now. January to June, if you write over 45,000 in issue pay business with America, which in 6 months is less than, I think it's like $7,000 a month with them, like, you're going to have, I'm doing the math in my head. It's a little bit more. It's like 7,500. You're going to get a 10% bonus from them. Okay. And if you write a full-time schedule, you should be able to write like almost 100,000 in business just with them. And if you do the math on that, a 10% bonus for your premium, if it's 100,000 in business, is 10 grand. And that's a check that you get right away from them. Like, my first year, I got like a 10 grand check or something. I don't even remember what it was. It's somewhere in that range. but it was huge. It was December. I was like, dang, bro, like I didn't even know this was a thing, right? They just gave me 10 G's. So if you're right now writing business, like be smart. Like you want to make more money, you can make $20,000 a year extra just from your bonuses through America. Um, on top of that, like their product is great and their product has a lot of value. We talk about value a lot. Like people, when they hear blanket statement policies, they're just like, they shrug them off. They hear them all the time. But the more value the programs have, the better, right? Double accidental, triple for common carrier, accidental deaths, right? They have terminal illness rider. They get the cash value with it. It's immediate payout. It's a great, great program for them. America's been around for over 100 years as well. So they're great. Yeah, every 6 months, they do that plan. The second thing I wanted to touch on with you guys is it's really important that we all understand. Like, I know there's a lot of questions about the leads and what's happening with like us using this different source. Like, I know that, we were talking about it and I was answering some questions in the Discord. It's really important for you guys to understand that FCC regulations are cracking down. Like aged leads aren't going to be around in 6 to 8 months. They have 6 to 8, every company is 6 to 8 months to implement this. They have to provide the consumer with who is calling. So if your name isn't a part of where you're getting your sources from, these big vendors that provide leads to the masses and sell them to two people or more, they're not going to, like, vendors aren't going to be able to sell leads to two people at the same time. They're not going to be able to resell leads anymore. So I'm telling you guys right now, because in 6 to 8 months, when the transition happens, like people are going to, like, lead vendors will not be here and there's going to be changes and adjustments. And I'm telling you guys now so we can get ahead of it, which is why we set this up. And like $250 a month to manage your ad, that you get $5 to $8 a lead for final expense leads, when most companies right now, if you go to Happy Agent for truly exclusive leads, they're going to charge you 30 plus, is nothing. You're going to make way more and keep way more business on your book with this exclusive source rather than a source that's going to resell your lead, upcharge you like crazy. Someone's going to sell it as an aged lead 2 or 3 times over, and then your lead is now getting replaced by some slick talker that says that they're doing an audit just like we do, and they're replacing your policy just like we replace other people's policies. So there's a lot of benefits to it. And I'm not an ads manager. I'm a sales guy. Like, I don't want to worry about everything else. And if you know how to do, your own ads and stuff, more power to you, man, go for it. But I'm doing it, and they're great people. They got a whole team set up for us over there. Like, they literally have a group of people for us to have support with. They have people that are going to build our ads specifically for us, for our real financial team. They know that we're all coming. They know that we're all signing up. We're going to have like exclusive access to our resources over there. So really good program. Just want to make sure that we're getting in front of all the adjustments that are going to come, because things are going to look different. There's going to be some agencies that might, I don't know what they're going to do as time goes on, because they don't have as many resources and partnerships and leads and stuff like that. So ILC leads will definitely still be available. They're going to look different. I don't know what they're going to look like. Again, guys, like, it's a lot of uncertainty. And I know for a fact that this is going to be beneficial for us and we can get all different kinds of lead sources. So Cody's a great guy. If you don't know him, you can look him up online. He's got a great reputation. I'm going to send the link in one more time if you guys didn't see it, but he's the man. Their team is great. And I wanted to make sure you guys knew that that is going to be where we're going to be going for majority of the sources and leads that we're going to be getting through the internet, right? We can always do mailers. We got a lot of mortgage sources for that, which are super high intent. But it's really important to make sure that for final expense, for general life insurance, we can get internet IUL leads, internet annuity leads through those guys. They're there to help, and they're there to provide a service to us, and they're really, really good at it. They've been doing it for years. So just wanted to make sure we all got that information there. And then one last thing I wanted to touch on with you guys, and I had it written down here just to check back to my note, is trial closes. So a trial close is something that you're basically predetermining to figure out if they're going to say yes when you present the numbers, right? And it's really important for us to use a trial close, because these people are kind of wishy-washy sometimes, right? If they know that at their fingertips they can go get another solution somewhere, Not all the times when I just throw numbers at them are they going to say yes. So before I throw numbers at them, I want to work out any kinks to have the best opportunity to get them to say yes. So if I go through my process and I'm like, you know, if I say, if I use this trial close, right? And I'm going to give you guys two different ones. One's going to be better than another one, but if I do no trial close and I go through my last why question and I just go into the presentation, um, it's like, you know, I don't know what they're going to say. I don't know if they have any lasting objections. I don't know if they have anything else that was on their mind. But if I use a trial close and I say maybe something along the lines of, is there anything else holding you back from moving forward today? They might say, yeah, I'm going to want to talk to my wife about it. I'm going to want to talk to my husband. I'm going to want to think about it. And I can try to overcome that and work that out. But I'm kind of leaving that up to them to still give me an objection. I didn't give them all the details yet. I didn't give them all the numbers yet. So I still technically have the power, but they told me straight out that they're not going to say yes. So to be a little bit more assumptive, to be a little bit more controlling moving into the numbers, what I'm going to do is instead of my trial close being open-ended for them, I'm going to tell them and I'm going to say to them, since it isn't a matter of whether or not we need this, since it isn't a matter of whether or not your daughter is going to need something put in place, we'll go ahead and look at 2 or 3 options. Since it isn't a matter of whether or not you want to protect the equity in the home, since it isn't a matter of whether or not you want the mortgage protection program for your family, we'll look at 2 or 3 options. That way we can find one that makes sense to you. Is that fair? And is that fair? It's closed-ended. They say yes. So what happens is I'm already acting like we're in an application now. I'm acting like we're already getting it. And so what I do is I go from, not really having an idea to you're getting it, right? So my attitude changes. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll review their situation with them right before that. Looks like you're 62, looks like you're 43, looks like you currently don't have anything to protect the home, currently looks like you don't have anything for the mortgage or the final expenses for your daughter. Boom, boom, boom. You're this healthy, you're this old, this is your family, this is where you're at financially. We want to make sure it fits inside your budget. Does all that sound correct? And because I was able to repeat back to them what they said to me, they feel heard and understood. And a lot of times at that point, they're like, yeah, and this, oh, and that, right? And they'll like add something on. And then once they do, or they don't, and they agree, yeah, that's my situation. I'm like, since it isn't a matter of whether or not we need this, we'll look at 2 to 3 different options. Is that fair? And then they say yes. And they never say no. And so what I do every single time is I just act like they already said yes to the policy. And now it's not a matter of whether or not they're getting it. That's how I treat them internally. I'm literally like, it's not a matter of whether or not they're getting it. And I'm like, which option are we getting? Which one makes most sense for you? So I present 2 or 3 options. If I'm doing mortgage, I usually do 2. If I'm doing final expense, I usually do 3. And I'll present 3 options or 2 options. And then they pick one, right? And before I give them the numbers, I'll say to them again, since it isn't a matter of whether or not we're going to get one, verify your first and last name spelling and your date of birth for me so I could plug that in here to the request for coverage. And I'm already acting as if we're in the application, right? And then so they say, yeah, this is my date of birth. Yeah, this is my first and last name. And then I'm like, all right, as I'm starting to fill some of this stuff out with some of your info, here's option 1, here's option 2. Which one makes most sense? I'm totally assumptive. Like I'm not asking you, do you need it? I'm like, which one is it? Right. And my attitude is what gets me across the finish line a lot of times. And even when people object at that point, my attitude doesn't change. You see, what happens with most people when they get an objection is their state deflates. And then it becomes like they know that something's up. They like feel it, right? So rather than being like, I want to think about it. And I'm like, what do you need to think about? I'm like, you just said you needed it, right? Like what do you need to talk to your husband about? It doesn't make any sense. I start to get into a battle and now there's friction. I want to, as Andy says, sell like a lion, act like a lamb. Like I'm acting like a lamb. I'm all calm, peaceful, but I know what I'm doing internally. I'm getting you to say yes. I'm making it easy to say yes to, hard to say no to, and your idea. And so when they do object, I might even increase my state. I might laugh. I can totally understand that. What most people do is that we just start off with the lowest program just to make sure we at least have something put in place for you rather than starting from scratch some other time. Because, like you said, it's not a matter of whether or not we need it. So we'll just go ahead and get you the one that's going to be most affordable for you. And then I just go into it. I'm like, were you born here in Carolina, or the Carolinas, or Florida, or whatever? And I just go into it. But my state doesn't change because if my state changed, they sniff commission breath. I don't want them to think that I'm like helping mode. I'm not commissioned for Tyler breath. Like I don't want them to think that. What's up, Manny?
Hey, so I know you mentioned how you said you'll tell them, it's not a matter of whether or not you're going to get a policy, so you're going to show them two or three different options. And the other one, you said you don't ask because you don't leave it up to be open-ended. Is there a point where you do say if you're able to find, for example, find something that's both comfortable and affordable, would there be anything else holding you back from moving forward? Or when?
So yes, absolutely. I mean, I'll say that, but I think that it's open ended to the point where like I kind of give them a little too much room to say no. Does that make sense? Like I don't want them to be the dictator of where the conversation's going to go. And most times when we do, they give themselves an out. Like these people are masters at avoiding commitment. And that's what they're trying to do. Um, and so ultimately I don't want to give them the opportunity to bail out of commitment is all I'm trying to do. Any other questions from anybody? I know we just talked about a lot of different things. If you guys haven't seen the script for, if you're using final expense, if you're using mortgage, if you can print it out and hold it in front of you, if you can have it with you and you can read it consistently daily, like guys, I'll be honest with you, I was producing a lot when I met Andy, and Andy sent him one of my calls because he was trying to learn, how to sell insurance. He didn't really know a lot about insurance. And so he heard one of my phone calls and he laughed at me. He was like, "Are you serious? This is what you sound like?" And I was like, "Dang, man, like, is it that bad?" And we listened to it together. And he's like, "Dude, never miss an opportunity to compliment somebody." Like, boom, I would have said, "Great for you for looking around to get something put in place for somebody." He's like, "Why is there a 3 second pause here? This person just lost credibility with you. This person doesn't trust you as much." And so if you guys record your calls, like go back and listen to them and just be like you'll find layups even if you like aren't refined. But if you go back and you listen to your calls, like if you send them to me, I'll bust you up a little bit. Like I'll send you a voice message back and be like, "Hey man, like I don't know. I think that we can be better here." Right? Like I'll be really straight with you because that's how I got better. Someone was really straight with me. And you guys will notice that, when people object or, when they ask me an odd question, like I just have easy ways to brush it off because like I've just been doing it for a little bit, but you guys can get to that point too. So it's really important that just by being able to, number one, overcome objections, number two, know the process. Like anybody can throw anything at you, and just because it's not that exact objection, you can pull a piece of like this word track out of the back of your head because you've said it so many times. Does that make sense? Right? If someone literally says to me, like I always use the example, like I got ice cream melting in the back of the car, like I got to bring in these groceries or something, like some odd example, like I will legitimately pull something from a word track that I memorized for another objection that makes sense in this time just because it's so memorized. It's just like right here, it's right on the tip of my tongue. And it's not like you got to go, back to, studying like you did in high school and college and like all that, but just read over this stuff every day, man. We know the stupidest things. We know the song that plays on the radio. We know the lyrics to the intro of our favorite TV show, but we don't know the things that can help us make money. You know what I mean? Like, why don't we know that stuff? So if you guys aren't able to do that, like just read through your stuff every day, like listen to trainings every day. You'll just pick up nuggets hanging around these calls and plug it in on YouTube. And, if you're trying to get better and grow, like daily activities that you can do every single day, long term, not try to expect the results all overnight, but just like you'll notice you'll just take one step forward every day. What's up, Stash?
Oh my gosh, I almost didn't even know how to work it. Jeez. All right. But so Aaron and I are probably going to do some in-homes in Spokane together just to try it out, right? And plus, then Aaron, can he's newer, and that way he can be with me. We can kind of do it together and like mirror each other. And I know that you did that. Where do you recommend buying those leads?
So if you're gonna do in homes, what I would do is you can run internet like Facebook ads for zip codes, which is super beneficial. They might cost a little bit more per lead. I don't really know. Um, I don't really know how all that works, but I know that Facebook is a platform that you can run per zip code and it's super, super simple. So if you do get set up with them and you're to go through Cody Askins' team, just tell them you want to do specific zip code. If not, for the time being, I know that when I did in-homes, I did ILC 1 months. What I would do is I'll buy about 50. About 50 got me my 6 to 10 presentations or 6 to 10 appointments that I was booking for the next day, like most of the time. If that didn't, like I would buy like 20 more and dial the wheels off of those. And then if I needed to get 20 more, I'll do that. But I just always wanted to make sure it was worth it to go out that next day when I was doing
So
them.
so ILC has actual in-home leads.
So, well, you can buy your leads per county. So like you click on the state and then you go to the county that you're in the area. And so like I know that like Arizona, like Phoenix area is massive. Like Maricopa County, like it would take me 2 hours to drive across it. So I would buy 50 leads and I would filter it to like the eastern the east side of Phoenix, I think it is, but like just like the ones that aren't an hour away from me, the ones that are like 45 minutes and under. So I can like get to all my appointments where they're at, right? And so, just kind of make sure when you do purchase them, I would try to figure out how far away these places are. So if you need more leads because of that, you might have to buy more and use the ones that are far away for like trying to call and close over the phone.
You just buy those and then you basically call them up and say, "Hey, my name's Nick. I was wanting to come out to your house and show you what it looked like." So it's the same pitch, but you're just telling them you want to come to their house.
So yeah, be a little bit more general though. So a lot of these people, since they are aged leads, they might have it already taken care of. So you're the underwriter that's assigned to make sure they're in the right program, right? And so technically, like really, we are right. And if they don't, if I say to you, Nick, hey, this is Tyler. I got some info. Looks like you had recently submitted looking at information on the different life insurance programs. Um, if they're aged leads, I might say, is this something that you were able to get taken care of, or were you one of the ones who were still looking around? If they say that they already got it taken care of, I'm like, perfect. They just have me calling out just to make sure that you did get put in the right program with the right company. I got some availability to come out tomorrow. Is morning or afternoon going to make more sense for you? Right? Like I'm not letting them like it's fast and I'm controlling it. Like if they control it, they're going to be like da 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 but da 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 I got to go. Da 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 I'm already good piece, right? But I got to take control of the conversation. I could even say something like, "Hey, this is Tyler. They just had me calling out just to do an audit. Looks like you had recently put in some info looking at the different information on life insurance programs, whether or not you got that taken care of. They just wanted me to make sure you got with the right program. Were you able to get anything put in place at all?" And then they say yes. You're like, all right, perfect. They have me coming out to your area. It looks like it's gonna be tomorrow. I got some availability in the morning and afternoon. Which one makes more sense for you? Right. And
I
then
love
so
that.
and if they object, it's the same. You're just overcoming the objection and moving back into the process, right? So, and like I might even say, and you can get really creative, like what I would do when I was getting into it and like I was getting better at presenting or doing in homes, I would start to say to them, I would verify their address and I'll be like, hey, this is Tyler. I got some of the info you had put in. I'm a field underwriter. Looks like you were looking into those life insurance programs. We got your address here is 125 Main Street. Is that right? And they would be like, no, my address is 123 Main Street. And I'm like, oh man, that's probably why they missed you. We had sent somebody out last week to try to drop off some information about the different programs for you. I'll be out in your area again tomorrow. I'll come out to the right house this time. Morning or afternoon, right? And it's just like you just can kind of wiggle your way in however way you see fit. But if I was going to give you a script, it would be one of those two lines. Um, and what you'll find is, you know, what I would say to them is that you need to drop off some information or get them some information. Like, I don't want, like, once you get there, it's so different when you're in front of them. It's so different. Like, literally, they open the door and they're just like expecting, like, if they, and I'm going to give you an example here. If you set an appointment with somebody tonight at 7 o'clock and it's for tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, I'm expecting that person to be there. In all reality, if I go to that appointment and nothing happened in my life crazy, that lady could have had their granddaughter call who needed a ride to school, so they're not at the appointment in the morning. Like, we have to understand that things happen in their lives and sometimes things change. So here's where you're going to find most of your success if you're doing in-homes. Like, every single person's house that you go to will not be there. When I did it, there was, I had a pretty decent show ratio. It was like, I don't know, 70% or something. Like, and sometimes some days it was 50, some days it was higher, but like it was typically in that range. But like, if someone agreed to the appointment, I'm like going back to their house later in the day if someone no shows me. Or like, if I have an opening with time, because like I got done a couple of appointments early, like I'm shooting over there and door knocking them. Or I'll leave a post-it on their door that says missed delivery. Call this number. And then when they call, I don't answer because I know that they're home and I just go back to their house because they already agreed to see me. And so like you gotta put some elbow grease into it when you do in-homes. But like, it's fun. Like, it is so fun to go out and meet people and talk to people and hear people's stories and what they're doing. And like, it's so different. So if you guys are doing in-homes, yeah, like I'll give you guys, like, I'll put some training in the VT or something too for some tips on in-homes because dude, they are fun and they're different, man. You get to connect with people. Like, your policies are, they just feel different. You're like in their house, you see how they live. You really see that they need this stuff. So, to put it simply, that's what I would put for a script. And like, if people no show you, dude, like, be prepared and like leave door tags and like leave your phone number. So when they call, you go back to their house later in the day, man. Bring your laptop, bring your leads with you. If people aren't showing up, pull over on the side of the phone, try to book some appointments for like an hour from now. Like, dude, get out there and hustle, bro. It's fun. Like, that's what I was doing. If people were no showing me, I was literally calling to try to set appointments for the rest of the day just because I was already out. I'm like, frick it, dude. I'm trying to see as many people as possible, you know?
Dude,
So
I love that. Thank you. I just want to mix it up because it's fun to be on the phone, but I think just like one day a week, I just need to get out of my house and just like just get out of here because I love being with my cats. I mean, it's pretty cool and all, but I mean, I do like being around people too. So I think just doing one day a week, just like getting out and being in a car and being outside and being around people, I think it'll be really nice and fun. Like it'll just be like something new where you get to and just seeing people and connecting with people because we don't really get to connect as much with people when you're on the phone, just like you said. And I think it'll make you realize how much people need this when you get back on